A wild Mustang Mare desperately approached a forest ranger, breaking every instinct of her kind. When he discovered the reason, his world was forever changed. Get ready for a story that will challenge everything you thought you knew about the bond between horses and humans and show you the extraordinary lengths a mother will go to save what she loves most. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Nevada desert as Ranger Jack Tanner began his routine patrol through the Ruby Mountains Wildlife Reserve. After 15 years of service, Jack prided himself on understanding the rhythms of the wilderness better than most. The Mustangs that roamed these lands were particularly special to him, wild, untamed symbols of American freedom that he'd sworn to protect. This morning, however, something felt different. A strange tension hung in the air, disturbing the usual tranquility of the landscape. Jack brought his vehicle to a stop near a dried creek bed. Scanning the horizon with his binoculars, a movement caught his eye, a flash of chestnut brown against the dusty terrain. A horse was galloping toward him, not away as they typically would. Years of experience told him this was highly unusual behavior for these notoriously cautious creatures. As the horse drew closer, Jack could see it was a mare, a beautiful Mustang with intelligent eyes and a distinctive white blaze running down her face. Her coat was covered in dust and sweat. Her breathing labored from what appeared to be a long, desperate run. "Easy there," Jack whispered, even though he knew she was still too far away to hear him. What happened next defied everything Jack knew about wild horses. Instead of maintaining a safe distance, the mare approached within 20 feet of his vehicle, stomping her hooves and tossing her head repeatedly toward the eastern ridge. Then she took several steps in that direction before turning back to look at him as if checking whether he was following. Jack had heard stories from the old-timers about horses seeking human help, but he'd always dismissed them as tall tales. Yet here was this wild mare, clearly trying to communicate something urgent. "What is it, girl?" he asked, cautiously stepping out of his vehicle. What are you trying to tell me?" The mare whinnied loudly, stomping again before taking several more steps eastward. When Jack didn't immediately follow, she returned, this time coming even closer, her eyes wide with what Jack could only describe as desperation. That's when Jack noticed something that made his blood run cold. Small streaks of blood on her front legs that weren't hers. Something was very wrong, and somehow, this wild creature had chosen him to help. As he grabbed his emergency pack and began to follow her, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that whatever waited beyond that ridge would change everything he thought he knew about these magnificent animals and the bond they could form with humans. Even in the most desperate of circumstances, the mare maintained a careful pace, frequently looking back to ensure Jack was still following. Her movements were urgent yet deliberate, guiding him across terrain she clearly knew by heart. Every few minutes, she would stop, stamp her hooves impatiently, and wait for Jack to catch up. "I'm coming," Jack reassured her, though he knew his human legs couldn't match her natural speed. The summer heat beat down mercilessly as they traveled further from the roads and deeper into Mustang territory. Jack radioed his position to headquarters, knowing full well how strange his report sounded. Following a mare that appeared to be requesting assistance, heading eastward into the canyon lands. The crackling silence that followed his transmission confirmed his colleague's disbelief. "Copy that, Tanner," came the eventual reply. "Just be careful out there. Backup is 2 hours away if needed." As they crested a rocky outcrop, Jack spotted a small herd of Mustangs in the distance. Unlike the usual tight-knit groups he observed, these horses were scattered, their body language suggesting distress. The mare leading Jack nickered softly, and several horses raised their heads, watching their approach with unusual intensity. An older rancher named Hank Jefferson had told Jack stories about the intelligence of these wild horses. "They aren't just animals, son," he'd said. "They remember, they feel, and sometimes they understand more than we give them credit for." Jack had nodded politely, attributing the old man's words to sentimentality. Now he wasn't so sure. The mare led him toward a narrow passage between two towering rock formations. The path grew steep, challenging even for Jack's experienced hiking abilities. Small rocks cascaded down as he navigated the difficult terrain, his boots slipping occasionally on loose gravel. "Where are you taking me?" Jack muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. The answer came as they rounded a sharp bend in the trail. The mare stopped abruptly, her ears pricked forward, her entire body tense. Jack followed her gaze and felt his chest tighten. About 50 yards ahead, a section of the canyon wall had collapsed, creating a natural pit with steep sides, and trapped within it was a young foal, unmistakably the mare's offspring. The foal's frightened whinnies echoed against the canyon walls as it tried repeatedly to climb the steep sides, only to slide back down. From Jack's position, he could see that the foal's right leg was injured, making escape impossible without help. Jack looked at the mare, who was now staring directly at him, her eyes reflecting a depth of emotion he'd never witnessed in an animal before. At that moment, he understood exactly why she had sought him out among all the humans who patrolled these lands. "I see your baby," Jack said softly, "but reaching it safely won't be easy." The path to the pit was treacherous, a narrow ledge barely wide enough for a person to traverse, with a sheer drop on one side. One wrong step could mean disaster for both Jack and the foal. As he assessed the situation, dark clouds began gathering overhead, threatening a summer storm. Time was running out, and Jack knew he faced an impossible choice: risk his own life to save the foal, or wait for backup that might arrive too late. The mare stomped impatiently, her eyes never leaving his face. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Jack evaluated his options. The narrow ledge leading to the trapped foal looked even more treacherous. Up close rain would make it nearly impossible. He had perhaps 30 minutes before the storm hit, and the backup team was still at least an hour and a half away. "This is Ranger Tanner requesting immediate assistance." Jack spoke urgently into his radio. "I've got a foal trapped in a pit with an approaching storm. Location is approximately 6 miles east of Checkpoint Bravo in the Eastern Canyon Network." The response crackled through. "Copy that, Tanner. Helicopter support is unavailable due to the approaching storm. The ground team is mobilizing, but the ETA remains the same." Jack glanced at the mare, who paced anxiously nearby, her eyes darting between him and her trapped foal. The young horse had stopped trying to escape and now stood trembling in the pit, occasionally letting out plaintive whinnies that tore at Jack's heart. "I can't wait," Jack muttered, securing his pack more tightly and pulling out a length of rope. "I'm going in now." The mare seemed to understand. She grew calmer, watching intently as Jack prepared his equipment. He laid out his first aid kit, water, and emergency blanket within easy reach on a flat rock surface, then tested his rope against a sturdy boulder. The ledge was only about 20 feet long, but it narrowed to less than a foot wide at its thinnest point. One misstep would send him plummeting at least 30 feet down. Jack took a deep breath and began his careful journey, pressing his back against the canyon wall for stability. Halfway across, a few pebbles dislodged beneath his boot, cascading down into the depths below. Jack froze, heart pounding, fingers digging into small crevices in the rock face. The mare whinnied anxiously from behind him. "It's okay," Jack called out, unsure if he was reassuring the horse or himself. "I'm okay." After what felt like an eternity, Jack reached the wider area surrounding the pit. From here, he could clearly see the foal's injury, a deep gash on its right hind leg, likely from sharp rocks during the fall. The young horse, a colt with the same chestnut coloring as his mother, backed away fearfully as Jack approached the edge. "Hey there, little one," Jack spoke softly, kneeling to appear less threatening. "I'm here to help you." The first fat raindrops began to fall as Jack arranged his rope into a makeshift harness. The pit was about 12 feet deep, with steep, smooth sides that would be impossible for the injured foal to climb. Jack would need to go down, secure the colt, and somehow find a way to lift them both out, a daunting task even for an experienced ranger. As he prepared to descend, Jack heard hoofbeats approaching from behind. He turned to see the mare had somehow found another way around, and was now standing just a few yards away, watching his every move. Jack marveled at her determination and intelligence. "I'm going to help your baby," Jack promised her, "but I need you to stay calm." The rain was falling steadily now, making the rocks slick and the rescue attempt even more dangerous. Jack secured his rope to a protruding rock formation and began his careful descent into the pit. His boots sliding against the wet stone, the foal panicked at his approach, limping to the furthest corner of the pit and crying out in fear. The sound triggered an immediate response from the mare, who paced along the edge, clearly distressed by her baby's cries. Just as Jack reached the bottom of the pit, his foot slipped on the rain-slickened stone. He fell hard, twisting his ankle with a sickening pop. Pain shot up his leg, and he bit back a cry, knowing that showing distress would only frighten the horses further. Now they were both trapped, an injured ranger and a wounded foal, with a storm intensifying overhead and help still far away. Jack looked up at the mare, who was staring down at them, her eyes wide with what seemed impossibly like understanding. "I'm sorry," Jack whispered, the gravity of their situation sinking in. "I've made things worse." The rain fell in sheets now, quickly pooling at the bottom of the pit. Jack dragged himself to higher ground within the confined space, fighting through the pain in his ankle. The water level was rising steadily. Within an hour, the entire pit could be flooded. The foal stood trembling in the corner, regarding Jack with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Its injured leg was held carefully above the ground, and occasional shivers ran through its small body. "We're in trouble, little one," Jack said softly. "But I'm not giving up." He tried his radio again, but the canyon walls and storm interference rendered it useless. They were truly on their own. Above them, the mare continued her vigilant watch, occasionally disappearing from view only to reappear moments later. Jack noticed she was moving differently now, more purposeful, less panicked. Using his uninjured leg and upper body strength, Jack inched closer to the foal, speaking in low, soothing tones. "I need to check your leg, buddy. I'm not going to hurt you." To his surprise, the young horse didn't retreat further. Instead, it watched Jack with intelligent eyes that reminded him strongly of its mother. Slowly, cautiously, Jack extended his hand, allowing the foal to catch his scent. Minutes passed in this careful dance of trust building, the storm raging overhead and water continuing to rise around them. Finally, the foal took a tentative step toward Jack, nearly collapsing, as it tried to put weight on its injured leg. "That's it," Jack encouraged. "Just a little closer." When the foal was within reach, Jack gently examined the wound. The gash was deep but hadn't damaged any tendons or major blood vessels. With proper care, the young horse would make a full recovery. Jack cleaned the wound as best he could with supplies from his pack and wrapped it with a self-adhesive bandage. Throughout the procedure, the foal remained surprisingly calm, as if understanding Jack's intentions. Once finished, Jack stroked the young horse's neck, feeling a swell of emotion at the trust this wild creature was placing in him. "Now we just need to figure out how to get out of here," Jack said, glancing up at the steep walls that had become even more treacherous in the rain. His attention was drawn by the movement above. The mare had returned, but she wasn't alone. To Jack's astonishment, she had brought 3 other Mustangs from her herd, 2 strong stallions and another mare. They stood at the edge of the pit, looking down with what Jack could only describe as determination. "What in the world?" Jack whispered, watching as the horses moved with apparent purpose. The mare disappeared again, and Jack heard scrabbling sounds from the far side of the pit. Moments later, part of the wall collapsed inward, creating a rough, sloping surface that led toward the top. It wasn't a clean ramp by any means, but it created a potential escape route. Jack stared in disbelief. Had the mare and her companions deliberately weakened that section of the wall? It seemed impossible, yet the evidence was before his eyes. The original mare reappeared at the top of this new slope, nickering softly to her foal. The young horse responded immediately, attempting to move toward its mother but stumbling on its injured leg. Understanding dawned on Jack. The horses had created an escape route, but the foal couldn't climb it alone. They needed Jack's help for the final piece of the puzzle, fighting through his own pain. Jack fashioned a makeshift splint for his ankle using branches that had washed into the pit and strips torn from his emergency blanket. Then, with gentle hands, he lifted the foal. In his arms, the young horse was heavier than expected, and Jack's injured ankle protested with each step. But determination drove him forward. Slowly, painfully, he began to ascend the crude slope, carrying the foal toward its waiting mother. Halfway up, Jack's makeshift splint gave way. His ankle buckled, and he fell to one knee, nearly dropping the foal. The young horse whinnied in fear, and its mother responded with an urgent call from above. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. The mare carefully picked her way down the slope, defying her natural caution around humans, and positioned herself beside Jack. Her message was clear as her eyes met his. "Put my foal on my back." "This is insane," Jack muttered, but he had no better options. With the last of his strength, he lifted the foal and carefully placed it across its mother's back, helping to balance it in a position where it wouldn't fall. Together, the unlikely trio began their ascent, the wild mare moving with deliberate care to keep her foal balanced, and Jack using the horse's sturdy presence for support as he limped alongside them. The storm was beginning to ease as they emerged from the pit, gray light filtering through breaks in the clouds. The other Mustangs maintained a cautious distance, watching the unusual procession with alert eyes. Once on level ground, the mare gently lowered herself, allowing the foal to slide carefully off her back. The young horse immediately nuzzled its mother, their reunion a powerful display of love that transcended species. Jack sank to the ground nearby, exhausted and in pain, but deeply moved by what he had witnessed. As he caught his breath, Jack noticed something unusual about the mare's movements. She was limping slightly, favoring her left front leg. Looking more closely, Jack could see old scars around her fetlock, evidence of a past injury. Realization dawned on him as pieces began to fall into place. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. From it, he extracted a faded photograph of a chestnut filly with a distinctive white blazer horse he'd helped rescue 7 years earlier. "Liberty," he whispered, using the name he'd given to the young horse they'd found trapped in an abandoned mineshaft. She'd been badly injured and terrified of humans, but something in her eyes had touched Jack deeply. He'd spent weeks helping the veterinary team with her rehabilitation. Before she was released back into the wild, the mare's ears pricked forward at the sound, her intelligent eyes fixed on Jack's face. She took several cautious steps toward him, stretching her neck to sniff the photograph in his hand. "It is you," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "You remembered me." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just any wild Mustang who had sought human help by chance. This was Liberty, a horse who, despite her natural wariness of humans, had specifically sought out the one person she remembered helping her years ago. Jack's radio crackled to life, the storm's interference finally clearing. "Ranger Tanner, do you copy? The ground team is 30 minutes out. What's your status?" Jack reached for the radio with shaking hands. "I copy. I've located the foal. The situation is extraordinary. Request veterinary support for minor injuries to the foal and medical assistance for myself. I've sustained an ankle injury. Copy that. Stay put. We'll find you." As he set the radio down, Jack noticed Liberty was still watching him, her foal now pressing against her side for security. The other Mustangs had retreated to a ridge above, maintaining their vigil from a safer distance. "You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you?" Jack said softly. "You remembered that humans helped you once, so you came looking for that same help for your baby." Liberty nickered softly. As if in response, she took another step closer, allowing Jack to extend his hand toward her. For a breathtaking moment, the wild mare lowered her head, her muzzle gently touching his palm in a gesture that transcended the natural boundaries between their worlds. The touch lasted only seconds before Liberty stepped back, returning to her natural caution. But those seconds had contained a connection so profound that Jack felt tears welling in his eyes. As Liberty and her foal moved a safe distance away to wait, Jack noticed something that had been hidden by the chaos of the rescue. In a protected hollow nearby lay the remains of an old Ranger hat, one just like he had lost during Liberty's rescue all those years ago. She had kept it close all this time, perhaps as a token of the human who had once saved her life. Jack looked up at the clearing sky, a sense of awe washing over him. In all his years of working with wildlife, he had never experienced anything like this, a wild creature not only remembering human kindness, but seeking it out again in her moment of greatest need. The approaching sound of vehicles signaled help was near, but Jack knew that nothing about his relationship with these wild creatures would ever be the same. Again, the rescue team arrived with efficiency, their vehicles carefully navigating the rugged terrain. Among them was Dr. Sarah Chen, the reserve's wildlife veterinarian, who immediately assessed the foal's condition. The wound is clean and well bandaged, she noted with surprise, glancing at Jack, who sat nearby as a paramedic wrapped his sprained ankle. You did good work under terrible conditions. I had help, Jack replied, nodding toward Liberty, who stood at a cautious distance, watching every movement around her baby. Dr. Chen worked quickly, administering antibiotics and ensuring the bandage was secure. He'll need follow-up care, but he should make a full recovery, she announced. The real question is what to do now. Jack understood the dilemma. The standard protocol would dictate bringing the injured foal to its rehabilitation facility until it healed completely, but that would mean separating it from Liberty and the herd, a separation that could prove traumatic for both mother and child. There's something else you should know, Jack said, his voice low. He shared his discovery about Liberty, how she had recognized him, and how she had deliberately sought human help despite her wild nature. Dr. Chen listened with growing amazement. If you're right, this changes everything we understand about Mustang behavior and memory. As the team prepared to transport the foal, Liberty became increasingly agitated, pacing and whinnying in distress. The foal responded with frightened calls of its own, trying to move toward its mother despite its injury. Wait, Jack called out, struggling to his feet despite the paramedics' protests. We can't separate them. Look at what's happening. The team paused, witnessing the powerful bond between the wild horses. Jack hobbled closer to Dr. Chen, wincing with each step. What if we try something different? He proposed. What if we treat the foal here, in its natural environment, with minimal human intervention? Dr. Chen frowned. That goes against every protocol we have. So does a wild Mustang seeking out a specific human for help, Jack countered. This is unprecedented. Maybe our response should be too. A heated debate ensued among the team. Some argued for traditional methods, citing concerns about the foal's recovery and the unpredictability of treating an animal in the wild. Others, moved by the obvious connection between Liberty and her foal, supported Jack's unorthodox proposal. Director Russell, the head of the wildlife reserve who had arrived with the team, listened to both sides before making his decision. We'll try it Jack's way, he finally announced, but with conditions. We set up a temporary observation post nearby, daily veterinary checks. At the first sign of complications, we bring the foal in. No exceptions. Relief flooded through Jack as he watched Liberty gradually relax, sensing that her baby wouldn't be taken away. The foal seemed to understand as well, settling more calmly as Dr. Chen completed her treatment. As the team established their observation post on a nearby ridge, Jack sat alone with Liberty and her foal at a respectful distance. The rest of the herd had returned, grazing cautiously on the hillside above. You're changing how we see you, Jack said softly to Liberty. You're showing us that there's more to connection than we ever understood. Director Russell approached, handing Jack a mug of hot coffee. You know this could end badly, he said without preamble. If the foal doesn't recover, or if something else goes wrong, your career could be on the line for pushing this approach. Jack nodded, watching as Liberty gently nudged her foal, encouraging it to rest. Some things are worth the risk, he replied. This is one of them. As twilight descended over the mountains, Jack faced the most significant challenge of his career. He had staked everything: his professional reputation, the trust of his colleagues, and, most importantly, the welfare of Liberty and her foal on. His belief in the extraordinary connection between a wild mare and the human who had once saved her life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, under a sky clearing to reveal the first stars, Jack witnessed something few humans ever would: a wild Mustang choosing to bridge the ancient divide between her world and his, creating something new and profound in the space between. 3 weeks passed in the Ruby Mountains, marked by daily visits to the small valley that had become a sanctuary for Liberty and and her foal, now named Phoenix by the observation team. Each day brought visible improvement in the young horse's condition, his steps growing stronger, his spirit brightening. The temporary observation post had evolved into something more permanent, a minimally invasive research station studying the unprecedented behavior of Liberty's herd. Scientists and wildlife experts from across the country had come to witness what many were calling a revolution in understanding wild horse cognition and emotional memory. Jack, his ankle mostly healed, sat on his usual rock at the edge of the valley, maintaining what had become a comfortable distance from the herd, close enough to observe, far enough to respect their wildness. Dr. Chen approached, clipboard in hand. "His latest blood work is perfect," she reported, the excitement evident in her voice. "No infection, excellent healing. Your unorthodox approach worked, Jack." Jack smiled, but his eyes remained on Liberty, who grazed peacefully nearby. Over the weeks, she had grown increasingly comfortable with the human presence, sometimes approaching within a few yards of the observation team. The rest of the herd followed her lead, their natural caution tempered by her example. "It wasn't my approach," Jack replied. "It was hers. She's the one who broke every rule we thought we knew about Mustang behavior." Director Russell joined them, accompanied by a woman Jack recognized as Dr. Ella Harlow, one of the country's foremost experts on equine cognition. They had been reviewing the extensive documentation of Liberty's behavior. "We're ready to present our findings at next month's Wildlife Conservation Conference," Russell announced. "This could change everything about how we manage Mustang populations going forward. Less intervention, more trust in their natural resilience." Dr. Harlow nodded enthusiastically. "The implications extend far beyond Mustangs. This challenges fundamental assumptions about wildlife management across species. The cognitive capabilities Liberty has demonstrated, the emotional memory, the ability to seek specific help are revolutionary." As they discussed the scientific significance, Jack noticed something extraordinary happening in the valley below. Phoenix had wandered away from his mother, his curiosity leading him toward the humans. Liberty watched attentively, but made no move to retrieve him, her trust apparently extending to her foal's interactions. The young horse approached with the natural confidence of youth, stopping about 10 feet from where Jack sat. Everyone fell silent, frozen in place to avoid frightening the bold youngster. Phoenix whinnied softly, stretching his neck toward Jack. Without thinking, Jack slowly extended his hand, palm flat, offering his scent as he would to any horse. What happened next left everyone speechless. Phoenix closed the distance and gently pressed his muzzle against Jack's palm, a gesture of trust that echoed his mother's weeks earlier. Then, to Jack's astonishment, Liberty herself approached, standing protectively near her foal, but making no move to lead him away. For a breathtaking moment, the three formed a tableau that bridged to worlds, the wild and the human, connected by threads of memory, trust, and mutual respect. "This isn't just about wildlife management," Jack said quietly, his eyes meeting Liberty's intelligent gaze. "This is about recognizing that the boundaries we've drawn between our world and theirs are more permeable than we ever imagined. They remember kindness. They seek connection. They trust when we've earned it." As if understanding his words, Liberty tossed her head and turned away, Phoenix following her lead as they rejoined their herd. The distance between them returned. But something indefinable had changed forever. 6 months later, Jack stood on the same ridge where he'd first encountered Liberty that fateful day. The research station continued its work, but with a lighter touch, respecting the natural rhythms of the Mustang herds. Their findings had indeed revolutionized wildlife management approaches, emphasizing cooperation over control. Liberty's herd could be seen in the distance, moving freely across the landscape they had inhabited for generations. Phoenix, now fully healed and growing strong, raced alongside his mother, his movement unhindered by any memory of injury. Jack's radio crackled with a routine check-in. All quiet on the western front. He smiled, watching as Liberty paused on a distant hillside, her distinctive profile unmistakable even at a distance. For a moment, it seemed she was looking directly at him, acknowledging the connection that transcended their separate worlds. not quite. Jack replied softly, just in perfect harmony. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who loves inspiring stories about the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals, and help us spread messages of courage and trust that can change our world.